Carlos Mayer-Koch. Now, Carlos has been a karate champion. He's had a particularly difficult road to traverse on his way to the Olympics. It's a journey with many twists and turns, and one I can't wait to share with you all. Very fortunately, I'm somewhat privy to the story that you're all about to hear today, having spoken at some length with Carlos just more recently. And I can certainly tell you that this is one of those stories that you'll walk away shaking your head at the end of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Carlos Mayer-Koch.
Thank you very much.
So,
hello, everyone.
So, Carlos, you've grown up with almost karate royalty in Mexico. So originally from Mexico, now living in Australia. And tell us about your first memories of karate.
Well, one of my very first memories is actually a sensation more than an image, and it is the sensation of the warm, wet wooden floor after it's been cleaned. I love that feeling. Yeah. But yeah, basically.
And how old were you then?
Probably 2 or 3.
2 or 3. And so mum and dad, they're around karate at this stage.
Yes, so they met through karate. They had
so you're
kids.
the product of a karate love.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I had 2 kids who had no other option but to do karate. We didn't know it, but we didn't have any option. So we were thrown into it from a very young age, and we were always around it because they would teach every day, and the kids could be there. So from 5 p.m. until 11 at night, we could be in there. And when we turned 3 and 4, my parents opened a special group for kids. Back in the day, it wasn't a thing. Now it's like very common. Yeah. So they opened a group for kids just because they wanted to push my sister and I to do it. And so they grabbed 5 other kids and they made up a group. And we started when we were very young.
Fantastic. And so started competing young as well?
Yes. So there were a lot of tournaments while we were little, but let's say as a competition in a more serious way, we started when we were 12 in a thing that is called the National Olympics in Mexico. It's not related really to the Olympics. It's just the name it has.
It's like a Mexican version of the Olympics, just for Mexico.
Yeah. So it's the highest sporting event in Mexico for the younger athletes. So everyone under 21, that is the biggest achievement they can do in their sport is to win the National Olympics.
Yeah.
And we started competing in those when I was 12 and my sister was 13. When she was 12 actually, but she's 1 year older than me. She started when she was 12, and then I got up when I was 12.
Yep.
And ever since I've been competing. So it's been, I was 12, 16 years now.
Wow, that's a long career. Yeah.
And how did you go in that first National Olympics?
Oh, I lost. Terribly, God, my ass beaten very badly. Yeah. But it was good because that fueled my second National Olympics in which I medaled. And then on my third National Olympics, I made it into the national team, which is for this first and second place.
Wow. Yeah. So the beating that mum and dad gave you afterwards certainly paid off.
Yeah, that definitely paid off.
And did you, when you say you lost, did you not perform well, or that you performed as well as you could and it just so happened to be that you were beaten on the day?
A combination of factors. Look, when I was very little, I didn't really wanted to compete because when I was 12, I've been around karate all of my life and I was sick of it. I wanted to do something else.
Bit of a rebellious teenager.
I wanted to do soccer, I wanted to play with my friends, to play Nintendo, whatever the kids when they're 12 want to do.
Yeah.
And my parents were very smart in the way they handle it. So they sort of, like fishing, let loose a little bit and then reel me back in. So I thought I was having all of this freedom. And then...
And that will just...
Yeah. Then I turn around.
Smart.
I turn around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they never
Nintendo was put in the dojo.
Yes. They actually never let me off the dojo. They just let me go once a week. So that was the way of, letting loose. They're like, you can only come to your class and then you're a free man.
Yeah.
Instead of being the 6 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah. Not training, just being there. But then my sister started competing, as I said, and she was winning. She was a very successful young athlete and a young kid in general. And suddenly I turn around and my sister is traveling, into these 5-star hotels, having buffets, swimming in pools.
She's living the life. She's living large.
Yeah.
The
And
karate
I'm
lifestyle.
I'm like, well, it seems rather silly that I'm here folding clothes and mopping floors while she's out there, getting buffet breakfast.
Yeah.
So if I have to fight for that, let's fight, literally. So I get back into the ring.
So for bacon, you'll essentially do anything. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing here.
I'll do it for the muffin.
Incredible. So your youth, you're very much you're at that national level really, really quickly. And
Yes.
at what age did you move to Australia?
I was 20. Oh, good question. 24.
Okay, so you're still quite young. So all of your karate development was in Mexico.
It was in Mexico, and the reason both my sister and I had the success we had is because my parents had been doing karate many years, and they were the highest exponents of their own field in karate in Mexico.
Right.
So they
and
were
what's that field?
refereeing.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were 3 world referees in Mexico. My parents were 2
Wow.
of them.
Huh. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so it was very interesting because when we moved to Australia, 1 year before the other world referee retired, and then my 2 parents came here. So basically, Mexico was left without world referees.
Oh, so they moved when
We
you
all
moved. You all moved.
Yeah, so 2015, my family and I, we all put whatever we can put into bags and come to Australia
Wow.
and start over.
And what led to that occurring?
Look, my parents have been invited before by a friend of my mom. So my mom used to be part of the World Referee Commission, who has 10 members in the world, and she was the only woman at the time.
Wow.
And there was
Yeah.
another member who is called Concasis, who is from Australia. And he told her, like, oh, why don't you come to Australia? Shalala. And my mom always thought he was saying, yeah, come down to visit. Pet the koalas, meet the kangaroos, go back home. But then with the years, she realized that it was an invitation to move to Australia. And then she said, look, my kids are young, they're still in school. It's not a good time to, move and start over. So, no, thank you. But then when I finished uni, which is 2015, my sister was already working in the field of psychology. My parents said, hey, we're moving to Australia. Do you guys want to come in or do you want to stay back?
Right. Wow.
So I jumped into the first plane with my mom. And,
really? Yeah?
Yeah. So we split up. My mom and I came first. My dad and my sister caught up with us.
Yeah. And so I'm guessing that mum and dad had this the dojo and had a business there, so that wouldn't have been a decision taken lightly by them, and also held in very, very high esteem within the sport, and I'm guessing the broader community as well.
Yeah, look, it was interesting because they do have karate academies. They had a big presence in 3 different states in Mexico, now a 4th one. And they left all of that to their students. So their students are now in charge of all of that.
Right.
And they just overlook it from Australia. And, as anything with success, you do a lot of friends, but you also do a lot of enemies. So they had a lot of people that didn't like them and a lot of people that didn't like me because I was their son. So consequently, it had a lot of good things, but there were also a lot of people that didn't like them because they were referees.
Yeah.
And they always held themselves to do what they think it was right. And sometimes people in power don't want you to do what's right, want you to do what's beneficial for them, and that creates conflict when you disagree.
Absolutely. So that invitation served as a great opportunity to start afresh, new country, new culture.
Yes.
And from the karate perspective, was it easy for them to make the move over here? And how was it for you now fitting into a new national karate ecosystem?
Look, I think for them the most appealing thing was the opportunity to open a new continent because our style is not as big as other styles. So it had presence in 3 continents. Being in Australia opens a 4th continent. And for me, it was just the excitement of trying to start from scratch because in Mexico, for better or worse, I was walking through their steps. So I was always the son of. Which I'm completely fine with because it's a good image.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see if I could do it for myself.
Hmm.
So that was my personal motivation.
Yeah.
And yes, when we came down here, I started actually focusing on the classes. I wanted to focus on building the academies.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got caught up in the competition. So got enrolled with the state team sort of by coincidence. And then I performed well because, like the level sort of remains.
Mm.
And then I went to the nationals. Then I make it to the national team in Australia. Then I was representing Australia in the Oceania Championships. And then the Olympics hit. So for the first time in history, karate went into the Olympics and the news were broken in 2017. So they were like, guys, we're in for Tokyo. Whoever wants to start, we're starting in 2017, September.
Okay, so I fear this is where the harrowing tale begins. So
Just before we start on that, can I find out
I get a drink first.
with your styles that you were saying
Yes.
are different to the other styles of
Yes.
karate? What are the main differences?
Look, the styles in karate divert depending on the history. So to make a quick recollection, karate prehistory comes from China. So all of what is Kung Fu then moves into Okinawa, mixes with a local thing called Okinawa Te, and that's where karate is born. And then modern karate comes from the combination of the Japanese that took that from Okinawa into Japan and turned it into the universities. The differences are not very big. The differences are differences of style and interpretation. So some styles have a wider stance, some styles have a shorter stance, some focus more on certain techniques than others, and the way in which they perform the techniques or in which they interpret the moves are slightly different, but there's not bigger changes. So in my style comes from Suri, which is a very relaxed long position. And yeah, there's like the main differences depend which style we're comparing against. So for example,
what styles are there that are prevalent at an elite level?
the bigger styles could be Shotokan, Shitoryu, and Goju-ryu. Shotokan, Shitoryu, and my style, they all come from the same family. So say they all have the same father, which is Suri. So in Okinawa, there were 3 styles, which are Suri, Naha, and Tomari. So from Suri, most of the current styles develop.
Right.
Then from Naha, you have only one big style these days, which is Goju-ryu, which is very interesting, actually. I'm also graded in Goju-ryu, and I like it because it has a lot of emphasis on meditation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So basically, it's more of meditation in movement. Yeah. And they have a lot of shortened stance and shortened moves, so it's very good for close contact fights. And the interesting thing about Goju is, story says that it was developed in the ships because all of the people that developed the Goju-ryu were people closer to the port, so more like sailors. Yeah. So if you live in a boat most of your life and you have to be traveling, you cannot really be jumping and doing pirouettes because you fall into the sea. Yeah. So they could have like shorter stance that help you with the rocking of the boat and and close
Bit of balance.
close combat because you're in a ship.
Yeah.
So and it's very interesting. And then it developed into a lot of meditation. So Goju-ryu is the actual only style that has 9 different types of breathing.
Really?
Which I won't go into it today, but it is very, very interesting. And
That
it
is
helps a lot
super
with
interesting.
meditation. Yes.
Wow. And so you are partly an exponent of that style, but you more broadly entrenched in.
So my base style is Shudokan, which is the one that comes from Suri. But as I said, because my parents were very high up in the referee world, they needed to know about all of the styles.
Yes.
So they basically mastered in all of them. And one very good friend of them, who is now passed, was the teacher of Goju-ryu and also my sister's teacher of Goju-ryu.
Incredible. So you're provided with quite an advantage compared to most,
Definitely.
I guess. So it's not only have you got world-class instruction and you're surrounded by the best people in the country, but it's almost it's very much in your DNA. You're the byproduct of karate love.
and definitely karate love.
Byproduct of karate love. What a beautiful thing.
I think we should make it a phrase.
Yeah, I like that.
Karate love.
I like that.
Look, yes, most definitely. I had an advantage because most people could go and train with their teacher, and that's their exposure.
Yeah.
I could have both of my parents, and I could have a lot of teachers that could also help me through my parents or because of my parents.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that regard, I had a huge advantage. I also had a huge disadvantage because of the same reasons. So during certain political times in Mexico, I was completely blocked because of my parents.
Wow.
So there were certain referees set by them that later down the road, when the political waves changed, they came and apologized because they were like, "Oh, sorry, I had to actually vote against your kid. Like that was my order."
Incredible.
I'd be really interested, like you've touched on that there, but for me as an athlete, you know, they say the grass is always greener on the other side, and I've competed against athletes who have had that that kind of experience of having a lot of family in the sport. What other disadvantages did you find having grown up in the sport and it's there all the time? What is that like?
Look, another disadvantage, if you may take it, it's the expectations. So taking me, for example, when I won my first national championship, no one but an I. They were like, yeah, sure.
It's no big deal. We expected that to
what's
happen.
next? Yeah. Like, your parents are the best in the world in what they do. Why would they be surprised if you are the best in the country? They're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You know? Like, good on you, you know, like, finally your
and
work
did you feel that was an anticlimax? Like, you were kind of expecting or hopeful of maybe some more adulation or positive confirmation?
Not really, because, look, also karate is a lot about humbleness. So something that I've been learning about these last 20 years is how much of humbleness is good humbleness. Because my parents could be humble to a degree that I find it counterproductive. Because sometimes people could be like, "Oh, so are you good at karate? Can you teach me?" And they could be like, "Well, I'm not that good. You know, I know a little bit." Yeah, the guys have been doing karate for 50 years. They're the best in the world. But yeah, it's like if you go to, you know, Steve Jobs and tell him like, "Oh, so are you good at business?" And get like, "Oh, you know, I have a business here and there. I can probably give you a few tips." And
I
you're
can
like,
fix your laptop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So in a way,
it's an apple.
Yeah, if it's an apple. If not, I cannot. Yeah. So in a way, it's counterproductive because instead of taking that position and being able to spread it, they are too humble to the point of quietness, and they just, you know, let it pass. And when we won the national championships, it was just a step in the ladder for the next thing. So sure, national champions, now let's go for the international championships. Now let's go for the Pan American ones. Now let's go for the world ones.
Yeah.
So instead of things being met with a great sense of success and achievement, they were met with happiness of, oh, great. What's next? You know, like, I finished my homework. What's next? You know, won the nationals. What's next?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And so by the time you'd left Mexico, so you had been a national champion, you're competing at a really high level. How warmly received were you then into the Australian karate community?
Look, by the time I left Mexico, I will always have to speak about my parents in this particular mix, but I was the national champion and the continental champion. My sister has been the national champion. My parents were the best in the world in what they did. And we came in, and my mom's friend, Con, told her, like, look, I believe you should establish wherever you want, but in South Australia, the Northern Territories, Tasmania, or Canberra, because they are the ones with the lowest level of karate, and they are the ones that could benefit the most out of your experience. Said that, you are free, do whatever you want. My parents found that South Australia has very similar conditions to the place I used to live. So
Similar climate?
yes, similar climate, but with bigger extremes that I don't like. Very hot summer, very cold winter. Bad on Adelaide. But
A lot of Mexicans.
Yeah, a lot of Mexicans. Our winter is like 12 degrees, you know, so anything under 9, I feel like, oh, what is this? And they have a lot of wineries where I come from. So when they're like, oh, South Australia has wineries and middle climate, South Australia it is. So here we are in Adelaide. And at the beginning, we were received by the local karate people of the South Australian Karate Federation, and we were took around, and they were very welcoming. And bear in mind at this stage, my English wasn't very good. I've always spoken English, but there are certain things that you do not understand if it's not your mother tongue. So it's different if I say like, oh, he comes with me, than if I say, oh, he's with me. You know? So certain little subtleties that,
That's an important one there.
Yeah, it's very important one. But if it's your second language...
A lesson learned early.
Yeah, definitely.
Good thing you got a karate.
But if it's your second language, you miss that subtle tone. And if they ask you like, oh, are you with him? You may be like, yeah, I'm with him, you know? Because I came with him. So yeah, certain things like that you lose in translation. So very soon, I started realizing that there was a lot of confusion in the national karate world because they thought that I was the student of people that I wasn't the student of. And then I didn't do anything but say the truth. I was like, oh, no, like, you must be mistaken. This is how the story goes. But then the person that was trying to make it look like if I was part of his academy and school got very mad at us because he thought we were like undertaking him.
So somebody appropriated you essentially.
Yes. So somebody was like, oh, yeah.
He's one of my proteges.
He's one of my prodigies, yes. And then to make things even worse, a lot of them... I know. A lot of the younger athletes were very excited because...
Yeah, there would be.
South Australia at this stage didn't have many national champions in the last few years. So suddenly the kids see someone come in and they're like, oh, like this is so cool. And also he's an adult. So they're like, oh, like we want to do this, we want to do that. And many of the local kids wanted to come and train with us. And my parents have always been very professional. So they always told them, look, as long as your teacher is fine with it, you're more than welcome because, the more you train, the better you get. So if you come to my gym, his gym, their gym, better than if you just go to one gym, because you have better exposure. So they always tell them, look, if your teacher is fine and it doesn't interfere with your classes, you're welcome. But then that also became an issue with the passing years because certain people could be like, oh, they want to steal the students. So then we back off and we're like, you know what? We don't want your students. We don't want your anything. You can keep everything. So a very nice welcome became a very nasty fight of power to the point that in my last national championships that I competed for South Australia, I got officially sanctioned. The reason why I was sanctioned was because I was wearing a jacket and a scarf after having a medical condition that cracked my neck. So the doctor told me you have to keep it warm. So we're in Tasmania in a venue that was very cold.
And Tasmania is cold.
It is cold.
Let
in the
alone
middle
in
of
a
the
venue
winter.
that's cold and in the middle of winter.
Yes. So the weekend before the nationals, I cracked my neck out of stress. So the doctors told me, I ended up in the hospital and they told me like, oh, put a jacket and a scarf and don't expose yourself. Probably don't compete in the nationals. But I went to the nationals,
Sounds like me.
Of course you did.
Of course we go to nationals. As if we're going to not go. And the week before,
you have to fulfill your commitments.
Athlete life.
So I went to the nationals and I was wearing a jacket and a scarf. And these guys were like, oh, you have to wear your uniform. I'm like, look, my uniform is here. I can wear it on top or on bottom. But my uniform is here. I'm not in breach. So, they basically... cornered me and told me that I was in breach of rules and I was a very bad example for the kids because I was being rebellious. So the president, the head coach, and the secretary pulled me apart and they gave me an official sanction and I have a beautiful email correspondence saying that I'm officially sanctioned.
So what's entailed? What's entailed with being sanctioned?
Oh my lord, that makes me so angry.
But you're not allowed to compete, or you're...
This was, and once again, this is why I mean, like it just becomes a nasty little power game. This just became a sanction in which, you've been sanctioned once. If you are sanctioned again, we will take, what is the action?
Your jacket.
You will no longer
You'll be stripped in the middle of the window.
It will be cold.
No. We will take punitive action or something around those lines.
Right.
So basically it's like, we're just setting the grounds in written that you've been misbehaving,
once.
So next time we can do whatever.
That really makes me mad. And this is something which is honestly, the more and more I speak to different athletes from different sports in Australia, and it seems to be something quite prevalent in Australia, maybe even in South Australia, the more I hear experiences like this, and it makes me, making me
rage.
angry. It's making me rage. Makes me want to go get my black belt in karate.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to hear that. That genuinely makes me so angry, and that's just crazy. And I think an issue perhaps in Australia with some sports, coming from a smaller sport myself, it's almost like what do they call it? Tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
If you are good in this country, in my experience, they do try and push you down. Whereas I have dual citizenship with Italy, and they were talking about competing for them, and it's completely different. Like the experience in Europe, even in America, is a great example, a great sporting place. Everyone wants their talent to be better.
Yeah.
So something that Carlos said was, his parents said, as long as it's good with your teachers, you can come and train here too, because we want you to be as good as possible. So train as much as possible. Whereas here, it's actually kind of a bit more, well, train with this person, and then if you succeed, then it's on us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a bit more of that
We own
competitive
you.
thing.
Yeah, we own
It's
the
a shame.
success.
It's a weird thing. I've noticed in my experience, it seems to be prevalent here in Australia. I've just noticed that.
Do you think it's because if there's like a smaller group, it's like a niche thing, like whatever it is,
And it is in
canoeing, or if
smaller
it's-
groups.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it's karate or something like that, and it's like there is only this club or one or two clubs, and it's like if you're going to be successful, we want everyone to know that you came from us because we want.
It's almost like a monopoly of sport.
There's
It is. It's like a
Definitely.
monopoly, and
Definitely.
then there's either one coach and a great thing at the moment is I mentioned it before, but we've got an Olympic swimmer who's standing up for stuff like this and talking about it now, and even we're having these conversations, even like in this podcast, and it's like hopefully, I don't know, perhaps through conversation we can eventually squash it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, I believe, sorry to interrupt,
No, you're-
that the more we talk about it and the more we put it out there, which is the reason I'm writing a book about this,
Good on you.
is the easier that people can find solutions to it. So, for example, there's a lot of people speaking up now, what you just said about the Olympic swimmer. Also, there's a documentary in Netflix, which I really recommend if anyone hasn't seen it. It's called Athlete A, about the gymnasts and all of the things that they have to go through. And we're talking very, very heavy stuff. And as you said, you hear things that make you rage. Well, sadly, the higher up you go in sport, the nastier these things get. So we're talking corruption, sexual abuses, people like, I don't even doubt that there's like people being hitman by things. Like I've had death threats in the sport.
Wow.
And not even death threats by another competitor that wants your place, like death threats from directors of the sport
Wow.
that want you to behave in one way or another. So the higher up you go into the sport, and once again, as you said, these are small niches. Let's face it, karate athletes are not soccer players. So I can only imagine what the most professional athletes have to go through, because karate is not going to make you rich, but soccer will. So the amount of things those guys have to go through should be very interesting to really
It seems to happen to be more prevalent in those sports where there's a bottleneck of opportunity, where there's only so many spots or so many positions available, and there's the fight is for the positions, not for the betterment of the sport, and everybody's got a for lack of a better word, a dog in the fight. Everybody's got their guy or girl that they want to see win or be on the team and have a vested interest. And unfortunately, these people are often the administrative people in that same sport who hold quite senior positions who can also affect those outcomes directly.
Most definitely.
When it comes to team selection and the like, because that was similar to your experience.
Yeah, and there was even a fair level, like the amount of stories I've heard about money specifically. If we talk about money, like the Australian funding, we get a lot of money into some sports, and that money sometimes doesn't go to the athletes. And something would be interesting to hear about karate, because I know that anything that had a potential to medal at Tokyo, so things like canoe, kayak, rowing is actually really well done. Their finances are well managed. But sometimes this money disappears in these niche sports, And that's where I think maybe that's where the corruption really is you've got these people who come in, and then let's say we're given $500,000 from the government.
Yeah.
And then, I'm training like 2 to 3 times a day for 4 years. I go overseas, I do everything, and I lose money. Like, can you explain that? Like, that money is meant to go to the athletes.
Yeah.
And if you've got someone who's, got tires, who's getting a $30,000 income every year, and then you've got another athlete who's doing the exact same thing and getting paid nothing, and they're both at the same level, then...
Yeah. And it's with a lot of these sports as well, they have varying degrees of governmental support wherever they might be. And, we've seen that in Olympic results over the generations, when the Russians threw all of that money at their Olympic sports, the gymnasts, the athletes.
That wasn't all they were throwing at them.
There was some little
Sorry,
laboratories,
Russia, I love
the
you guys.
doctors.
I do want to come visit one day.
The scientists.
That's right.
But they threw their national honour behind these sports to prove a political point ultimately, and then when the politics subsides that's no longer the national interest. Personal interest seems to fill that vacuum, and in a lot of these sports, that seems to be where we're at now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting that Carlos said that you think that there'd be more corruption in that professional level, because I kind of imagine that for something like basketball, like NBA, they just seem to, it's like every individual athlete for themselves trying to become the next Kobe Bryant or trying to be the best they can be. Whereas I feel like there's more, as Dave said, perhaps there's more of that corruption with a smaller sport. Because why? Because there's not the amount of money in it to be professionally like.
There's not the long tail.
Yeah,
so
well, there's
you've
not
got
the
like
eyes on the sport.
two or three people that have the opportunity, not even make the money, but have the opportunity to make the money. Whereas in sports, like mainstream sports like football, or football's a really good example, or soccer, there's a few guys that are making tens and tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, but there's a whole lot of guys making $500,000 a year. So there's not that same scarcity of opportunity. If you're the 5th best soccer player in the world, you're still doing okay. Whereas if you're the 5th best kayaker in the country, where does that leave you financially? Yeah. Or if you're the 3rd best, maybe. It's scarcity of opportunity. Yeah. So
it is annoying when they have like a selection committee that can make a decision based on whatever they want in terms of who gets to go.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to let's have a tournament or a race or whatever this situation is, and whoever wins that is the selected athlete, and then that would be a little bit more fair, you would think.
Well, corruption only exists where injustice is tolerated. That's my quote for the day, by the way.
That was nice. You snuck that one in.
The thing is,
I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity.
It was written on your sleeve.
It gets harder and harder when interpretation comes into play. Because, for example, something I really like about athletics. He crossed the line before you. He's faster than you. End of the story. We don't care how you feel. We don't care about anything
there's no
else.
Points.
It's very easy to watch. And we have super speed cameras that will tell you the little microsecond who crossed the line first. But even in boxing, which is probably the most popular fighting sport, many times people are like, no, that fight was completely stolen. The referees are blind. The thing is, how are you meant to determine who actually fought better? The one that scored more points, the one that got scored on less, the one that moved better, so the more interpretation coming into it. Same thing with gymnastics and certain things. So you have to be very vigilant on the process being as fair and as objective as possible, because otherwise you only have all of these people that are angry at the process. Same thing as you said, like if the selection process is whoever wins this tournament, fulfill it. Yeah. This person won. Hey, they won because of B or C. Well, yeah, but the selection process says this. I'm so sorry. This year, John goes.
Yeah.
And was
Bloody
it when
John.
you?
He always goes.
And at what age were you conscious? Was it when you came to Australia that you became conscious of? Well, no, because you had mentioned earlier that the corruption.
Yeah.
When did you realise that had potential to play a role in your career?
Oh, well, the thing is, and it's something that I really enjoy talking with my Mexican athlete friends, because everyone in Mexico knows about the corruption, and they think it's a national thing. So they're like, oh, bloody hell, Mexico did it again. They stole millions of dollars because they're corrupted. Oh no, they sent John because they were corrupted. So
Mexico.
yeah. But then when I came to Australia, it was an eye opener because I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's not a Mexican thing. It's not a Latin American thing because once again, being in the Pan American Championships, you're like, oh, Argentina did it again. Yeah. Bloody Brazil is doing it, Yeah. and then you come and you're like, oh, same thing. Then you talk with European athletes, same thing, So, yeah, I believe the peace of mind that Australia gave me is it's happening everywhere. And that's why we all have to do something about it because it's a problem that is within all of us. We all have that potential to be corrupted, and we all have that opportunities in which they tell you, you know what, I'll give you a little bit of funding, just don't tell your other athlete friends.
Wow.
Yeah. So then it's very easy to cross the line and be like, you know what, I really need to go to Tokyo, so sure, bring in the money. But the moment you say yes, well, you're part of the wheel, sadly.
So this book that you're working on, is there a working title that you've got?
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, it's called John did it again. No, the title I've been fiddling with is called The Olympic Dream or A Wake-Up Call. But we all know that the word Olympic is very...
copyrighted and protected, trademark.
Yeah. So I'm fiddling around with other titles in my head. I'm still going through.
Okay, so any listeners with an Olympic alternative there, be sure to reach out to Carlos and let him know. So Carlos, your Olympic dream, when did you first become aware that karate was on the agenda for Tokyo?
2017. Okay. And actually I was a big pessimistic because karate has been trying to get in for the last 20 years and every time everyone gets very excited and every time it's a no. So this time I was like, nah, I'm not going to get excited.
And you could imagine Japan just sitting there going, is it going to be sumo or is it going to be karate? Which one are we going to put in there?
Sumo would have been amazing.
Because the host country gets to choose. Yeah. So, and they were karate. Okay.
Yeah.
They would have been surely sumo. They would have walked away with gold.
Absolutely.
So,
but they wouldn't have enough international competitors, I'd say, in sumo. I actually researched sumo wrestling recently. Women can't compete. Women aren't meant to compete in traditional sumo wrestling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my friend made a joke that we should do it.
Wow. And
then I looked it up and I can't. But anyway.
Is this an alternative to weight cutting? Or
Instead of dropping weight for boxing, I thought I'd do sumo wrestling.
I did see they have a height requirement in sumo, and a guy got plastic surgery. I'm just serious, on his forehead to make it 6 inches taller so that he could compete in sumo.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And they let him in then?
Yeah. Well,
you kind of got to at that point, don't you? You're not going to say no to the guy that just had his forehead extended by 6 inches. All right, come on.
He had a massive advantage because he just had the headbutt.
All right. So 2017, you're just chilling one day and then you find out that it's going to be in the Olympics.
So I'm in denial, not wanting to get my heart broken again. And they're like, hey, guess what? They said yes. I'm like, nah, they didn't. I'm like, yes. So I'm like, okay. So, I was...
And what position were you in then? Were you a champion at that stage? Were you competing
I was national
actively?
Champion, but I was semi-retired. So, yes, I was winning, but athletes, you'll know, I was winning off the past of the glory. So I wasn't really putting into any effort. I was just riding my already sharpened skills and taking them to whatever would that take me. So I wasn't planning to win any world championships at that stage. I was just,
You were just cruising.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, damn, this is getting serious. And I haven't been in the international scenery for years because on top of that, let's put a rule into everyone's mind that is, if you change countries, the World Karate Federation sanctions you for 2 years.
And had you done your 2 years by that stage?
Yeah. So in 2017, if you contemplate that I came in 2015, 2017 I was still banned from international championships
so you weren't
because of the sanction.
Okay. So you weren't quite sure how you'd measure up at an international level all of a sudden.
Exactly right. So I'm like, sure, I've been state champion and national champion, but I don't know how I'm going to do in the internationals. And that was the first year I could compete in the Continental Championships, and I won them. which was very good. Then we started into
the Continental Championships. That's Oceania.
Oceania Championships, yes. So then the whole madness started because there were a lot of championships lining up. So you have two types of championships for karate. One was a Premier League, one was a Series A. So basically, Premier Leagues could be for elite athletes. The top 50 athletes of the world can compete. And if they don't want to compete, then the top 100 have the chance to fill in the spots. But if you're not in the top 100, you don't go. And then you have the Series A, which are basically open format. Whoever wants to comes in. And that is the pathway
That's one for you.
That's me. I'm there. Yeah.
to get into the Premier League.
Number 101.
I see. Yeah, okay.
So if you have not ranking, you can go through the Series A, get ranking, and then go to
Let's
the Premier
all
League.
try Series A next year. Okay,
Let's go together.
Yeah, let's go together. Yeah, we can form a club. All right,
I'll bring my jacket.
You'll get sanctioned.
no scarves allowed.
So then I started putting my finances in order because suddenly you have 6 or 7 overseas trips scheduled, and you have to train, and you have to add up all of the national trips and the national camps and the national championships and etc. etc. So the whole thing started off in Germany, and that's, speaking of funding, that's when the Australian Olympic Committee said like, whoever medals in Germany, we're gonna give them $20,000 for gold, 15 for silver, 10 for bronze.
That's very good. Yeah.
Wow.
Safe to say that they kept their money in their pockets because no one medaled in that tournament. So we actually all lost very badly. I believe the guy that won the most passed 3 rounds in Germany. So, and that was the only Premier League that you could access before the top 50. No, this 2017.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this was the last Premier League that was still open for everyone. That was a national team member. After that, only if you're in the top 50. So that's why we all went. And then, got our ass kicked, come back to Australia, and we start preparing for the next one. So then I went to Istanbul and China, and I have a whole list. But so we start going to all of these different tournaments, and then because of many reasons, people start dropping off. Some didn't have the results, some didn't have the money. I did a very good job cutting all of my social life. So I could just work like every day here. And I cut a deal at my work where they could let me go to compete. So I was overseas competing, then coming back here to train and work. And that was my life for 3 years. Basically, no social life, no drinking allowed, no nothing, but training and working. And in 2019, I got dropped off. So I was in the top 50 of the world. I was in place 27, I believe, or 33.
That's pretty decent. That's pretty decent.
Wow. Yeah, and
for anyone who might have any scrap of a doubt. Anyway,
particularly because you have to put in place. This is just from 2017 to 2019. So on those 2 years, I made those places. Because points after 2 years get deleted, and after 1 year they get halved. So after my 2-year sanction, I didn't have any points. So
for that reason they dropped you.
So in
purely on
2017,
points.
I start from scratch. So I started the Olympic race from scratch.
From scratch, and made it to top 27 in the world by 2019.
And then in Shanghai, a friend of my parents approached me and told me, like, hey, I need to let you know you've been spotted by the Olympic Committee, International Olympic Committee. And so far I'm like, oh, nice. And then the rest of the conversation was like, not as nice. He told me, and they're asking why is a Mexican athlete with a Mexican passport competing for Australia. So just to let you know, shit is about to rain down on you, mate.
Yeah.
And then I explained him, like, look, I am not on breach of any rules. This is the Australian rule book. This is what I'm doing, and I will have a passport by the time the Olympics come by. Now, I couldn't do the World Championships because I wasn't an Australian citizen, but that was the only thing that I wasn't allowed to do. And we also found when the World Championships came around, because they told me, like, oh, you don't have a passport, you really cannot do the World Championships. So that was also another setback because the World Championships were the ones that give you the most points for the Olympics. So without the World Championships, I was collecting points in all of the other possible tournaments. And then in 2019, this guy is like, oh, well, just be careful. Came back. This is December, to 20th of December, I believe. Then I come back, and on the 7th or 8th of January, some friends of mine call me, and they're like, hey, what's up? What happened? I'm like, oh, just chilling. And then they're like, no, you didn't know? I'm like, no, what? Yeah, you've been scratched from the sports data. You're not in the
from the world ranking.
Yeah. They took you off?
They took me off.
So you're number 27 in the world, and they've just, you wake up one morning and...
Next day, delete. Not
that would kill me. Yeah.
Not a letter written, not a phone call. Like just thanks to my parents' friend that gave me a heads up.
Wow.
That's the only pre news I had.
And the rationale for that is because you'd accumulated those points with a Mexican passport.
Yeah, so I didn't have an Australian passport.
Whilst representing Australia.
Yes.
And the Australian Karate Federation, they were aware that this was what was going on. They were 100% aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when that happened, obviously my reaction was the same. Then you're like, no, this cannot be real. So after you check for the 5th time and refresh the page and it is real, then I had... That beginning of the year was going to be very busy because one weekend I was in Paris. Next weekend I was coming back here for the selection of Oceania. The next weekend I was going to be up in Spain. And then the weekend after that I was going to be... the 2 weekends after that I was going to be down in Dubai.
Wow.
Sorry, not Spain, Salzburg. And then Dubai. So I have all of these things planned and suddenly, boom. You're out of the lists. And that's funny because I'm out of the lists, but I'm inside of the enrollment of the tournaments because that happened before, which is just a weird glitch because you deleted me, but I'm already enrolled. So
you can't delete me off the enrollment. So you're still booked into these competitions.
Yeah, because I already paid for the enrollment, so they cannot delete me from there, but they just delete me from the points.
So could you see a pathway forward as a result of that?
I start calling and sending emails.
Yeah.
And then they told me like, look, there's not much we can do and we don't know what to do. And long story short, no one knew what to do or what was happening. So I spoke with the president of the Federation, of the Australian Federation. I was like, dude, I sent you a letter in December letting you know that I've been advised to do something about this. Well, guess what now? Shit is down on us. Now they took action before us. So now we have to do something. Didn't got any reply like on 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Oh, that's the worst. That's
by the time the calendar hit the tournament in Paris, I just hopped in a plane and went there.
I was going to ask if you went. Or did you? No,
I went to compete, but my brain was somewhere else. So I went to compete, and I was while everyone was warming up and finding places to train the days before the champs, I was just following people around the venue,
chasing officials,
after lunch. Yes, and also you don't have a lanyard, so you cannot really access anywhere. So you have to be chasing, this weird fan behind, closed doors and up the windows. And,
But you're 27th in the world.
Yeah. So suddenly I became a creepy stalker for many of the karate officials, and I finally tracked. So I finally tracked down the appropriate person, and the appropriate person told me to speak with another appropriate person, and then that person told me that I should speak with my national federation, but that they were happy to let me compete in the championship that I had already enrolled. But after that, they didn't know what to do because they were in breach of the rules. And so then I thought
they were in breach of the rules by letting you compete.
Yes,
Australia was.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I know
in the national championship. So you were allowed to compete.
Yep.
But you were in breach of the rules because of the passport situations hadn't been resolved.
So I thought I was very clever because I pulled out the rules of Australia and I showed them. And I told them, look, I'm not in breach of the rules. This is my National Federation rule book. This is my Continental Federation rule book. We're fine. They told me like, oh, thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Oh.
They're also in breach of the rules.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that also didn't make me very popular.
So the
Yeah.
federation wasn't
Yeah.
compliant with their international
'Cause-
obligations.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is why you didn't get a response for 3 weeks because
They were like, oh dear.
Maybe.
That's
maybe.
interesting.
dear.
So with canoeing and with my citizenship, because I actually did something similar to you,
Yeah.
so it's really, really interesting to hear this. And I don't know if you've had this as well. Might have been different because you've come to live here. But a lot of people don't understand competing for a different country.
Yes.
And a lot of people were always asking me, oh, can you do that? Why would you do that? All of those sort of questions. For canoeing, the rules are you don't actually have to have a citizenship, but you do have to have a passport. And so were you in 2015 when you came to Australia or what year roughly? Okay, so it was 2015 when you came. Yeah, so the Australian government pretty much should have just kind of expedited like America or like the Middle Eastern countries. And I think I heard of Turkey doing it as well for a kayaker. Is they just give you a citizenship. If you're like, we're talking about obviously in terms of Australia's national karate athletes, you would have been someone who probably had the most hope.
Look,
Yeah.
I also went that venue. So just for purpose of speed, I didn't go through that, but I'll tell you now.
Yeah, please do.
So-
I'm very interested.
Obviously, amongst all of the stress, I was researching and digging and doing things because when I found out that I couldn't do the World Championships, I also wanted to expedite this whole thing so I had a chance to get those points. So I went to the government, and this is a hilarious loophole in the government rules because they tell you, look, we are happy to expedite it under one of these 3 conditions. You play footy for Australia, you play cricket for Australia, or you are part of the Olympic team for Australia.
There you go.
But to be part of the Olympic team for Australia, you have to be able to compete in the process that gets you into the Olympic team. They will not allow you to have an expedited passport unless you're part of the Olympic team, but you cannot be in the Olympic team unless you have the
Obviously,
passport.
yeah.
So it is a very nice little,
That's
wrap
pretty-
your head around that. Eh?
Whoever wrote that one has no idea about sports.
Not at all.
So
Whoever wrote that seems to be very biased towards soccer and was it soccer
footy,
and
footy,
cricket.
footy.
No,
Not
AFL, Aussie rules.
AFL, yes.
Of course, it was made for the Americans to come over and play.
So who are you playing football for now?
You can play footy, yeah. Can you imagine on the field?
Add some letters to the cross and the power.
Yeah, that's
Let's
it,
see
yeah.
who replies first. So I did exhaust that avenue, and they told me, look, bring us a letter from your federation, but we don't think we can do anything for you. And then on top of that, my federation was not very fast with anything official.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
So anyway, went to Paris. They told me, bring us a letter and we'll see what we can do. And we'll see you in Dubai. Bring us the letter in Dubai. So I was like, sure, I'll bring you the letter in Dubai. So came back to compete here in the selection for the Oceania Championships. And at this stage, I just flew back from Paris. I've been in the snow. I'm cold. I'm drained emotionally. I haven't eaten properly. I did actually a very good couple of fights in Paris. But then again, like my body's tired. I'm completely out of it. Come back here to fight for the selection. And at the same time, I'm talking with the president, I'm talking with the secretary. So in the meantime, everyone's warming up. I'm like, sorry, I'll be back. And hey, man, oh yeah, we'll talk in a minute. Okay, sure. You keep warming up, but you're sort of looking. So long story short, they told me, come find us at the end of the tournament. We'll have an answer for you. And,
So during the tournament, you've got this underlying stress of,
Yes.
will I win?
Oh, and that
I
stress is
don't
the
know.
worst.
ever
So
since January.
You're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
out at you're
my
in
mind
your
is
head.
somewhere
You're
else.
completely
out. Which I didn't want to admit. It took me many years to make peace with this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Because when you're competing, if you admit that, you lost. So when you're competing, you're like, no. I mean, I'm just, oh, wait, John, come back, John.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
John again.
Yeah. I'm just going to John this thing out. So I got in there. I won the selection for the championships, but then I got my ribs broken. So instead of the meeting, I went to the hospital and then I came back. And this is the most hilarious thing at this stage.
Oh, so you missed your meeting with the officials? Because
No. went into the hospital.
Yeah.
They told me I have a broken rib. I have to rest. I told them, sorry, I have a meeting. I'll be back.
Huh.
So I get up from the hospital, go into the meeting because it's paramount for the Olympic results. And I am 27 years of age at this stage, or 28 when this story is happening. And my mom is there. And then they're like, oh, perfect. The meeting is on. Helena is my mom's name. Helena, could you like to come in for the meeting? Carlos, you can wait here. And my mom is like, what? And they're like, yeah, we'll talk with you, and then you can communicate with Carlos. And she's like, he's an adult. He is the one that is representing. Why do you want to talk to me?
Yeah.
And she's like, no. If anything, he's going in there alone, not me alone, you know? Like, but we're going in there together. And then they were trying so hard for just her to be in there, which I don't know if they were trying to make, you know, like a broken line of communication to be able to blame it on X or Y.
Yeah.
Huh.
So anyway, I walk in there.
Devious.
Yeah, very devious. And then when the meeting went through, you'll find it even more devious because I'm talking to them and they're like, yeah, they told us you cannot do anything about it. I'm like, who told you that? And they're like, oh, Peter. I'm like, well, I spoke with Peter in Paris and Peter said something different. Peter said this. What? No, Peter didn't say that. I'm like, yeah. You want me to put in the phone or an email? And they're like, oh, well, he told us something different. I'm like, oh, did you speak with Peter? And they're like, no, John spoke with Peter. I'm like, oh, of course.
John.
You know, yeah. I should probably be changing the name of John because there's like 6 different people named John now in this story.
They're all bad.
Yeah. So anyway, it's all of this mixed story in which one person told them that another person had said this. I'm like, mate, I spoke with both of those persons in Paris, and both of them told me, give me the bloody letter. Why are you making it so hard? Give me a letter. And I'm out of your hair. Like, I just need a letter that says basically what's happened. I came to Australia. I compete for Australia. I was not on breach of any rules. I will have a passport by the time the Olympics come around. And I have won these championships. That's all you need to put in the letter. It's all true. Give me the letter. I'm out. So they said, sure. You'll have the letter by the end of the day. So I took the plane back to Adelaide and I had a letter a month later, which meant Dubai and Salzburg had already finished.
So at this stage, you're feeling very much sabotaged.
Oh, yeah. I definitely didn't feel a lot of support from the Australian Federation. But, and I will get down into that venue later, I feel a lot of athletes didn't feel support from the Australian Federation. So I cannot really say it is because they don't like me or it is because they're not efficient. I don't know what is the reason, but
there's definitely some kind of culture there that's not supporting its athletes.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of shared feelings of lack of support. And I'm speaking athletes that could go for the first time on this history of the sport into the Olympics. It is terrible that they don't feel support. But anyway, so broken ribs, complete uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen. I flew off to Dubai and Salzburg, hoping I could heal in time to compete. And my doctor told me I was retarded. My doctor told me, yes.
Doctors.
Yes. Who wants to hear what they have to say, right?
But his name was John.
So my doctor told me, look, of course I cannot force you to do anything, but I'll just let you know. If you as much as move that rib and it punctures your lung, you are into surgery for death of life. Like, this is life-threatening. So I couldn't advise you doing anything. And if you do decide to take that plane, I advise you don't carry your own luggage, let alone compete. So I texted my friends and I was like, hey, I have everything paid and booked for. I really need to be there because if I don't compete, I have time to actually chase down these officials.
You can lobby these officials.
Yes, and actually sit down and get things done on the other side of the spectrum. But tricky thing, I cannot carry my bags. So can you help me? And great friends, they all said yes from different countries. So different people were getting taxis for me, carrying my bags around.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. That's the most of a celebrity I've ever felt because these high-end athletes were doing everything for me, you know. So yeah, I got completely spoiled by my friends, and all of the training camps that I had in the middle of that and all of the trips just became leisure with a broken rib. So as much leisure as you can get with that. And I just spent the time loving the officials and getting all of the handshakes done, making sure that they were going to respect whatever happened after the letter came in. And in the meantime, this was very important because in this meantime that I was resting, the Mexican athletes approached me and they told me like, hey, we heard you're competing in the Pan American Championships. That's so cool. And this is the first I've ever heard about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you couldn't compete in Pan American Championships because that would definitely get rid of your any chance of competing for Australia.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So suddenly I'm like, what?
So,
And they're like, yeah.
do you know where the rumor
What?
emerged?
This is
Or-
crazy.
okay.
We need the suspenseful music for this. Okay, okay, this is crazy.
just quickly looking.
Yeah. So I'm like,
What's...
yeah, I'm like, what? Where did you hear that? You're talking crazy. But at the same time, not saying yes or no, just saying like, oh, what's this new information coming from? What's happening? You know, what's moving the waves? So then I called my father and he's like, oh yeah, the president called me. He's been trying to actually get you for a few months, but I've been just brushing him off and telling him to call you instead of me. But
This is
Well,
the
there-
music. This is
yeah,
the music.
yeah, that is the
It's
suspense
It's
music.
needed. So yes, so
You
go
said
on.
the word
So-
president, that's why.
Yeah. So he told me, do you want me to... The music is so
I
funny.
love this music. I know it's so suitable though. This is what we have to go through. God damn it!
Yeah,
All right,
I
yes,
like
so
it.
go on. Yes.
So he told me, do you want me to contact the president and tell him that you're interested? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Because like now I have two offers. They both cancel each other. I don't have a solution for any of these offers. And I have broken ribs. So will I make it to the Pan American Championships on time? Will I have time to heal and train? Because, yeah, sure, if you heal, but you haven't trained the last 3 months, what's the point?
And you're working so hard to represent Australia. You might have also been thinking, is this just a sabotage again? Like, is somebody trying to knock me off balance by getting me to go to Mexico?
Definitely that
and-
crossed my mind.
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah.
that crossed my mind. Like at that stage of life, you just see enemies behind every shadow. You know,
Yes.
you're like,
I've
what's
seen
gonna
it,
jump
yeah.
me next?
I
Yeah.
totally get that. Yeah.
So I'm completely uncertain. I don't know what's happening. My father just confirmed this. So I'm like, look, my father has my best interest in mind, so I can trust him. But what's going on with the president? I definitely should talk with the president in Mexico. And also, if I do the Pan Americans, I cannot do the Oceania, and I just won my place for Oceania. So what's going to happen? So I took sides with Australia.
Ooh,
Oh, yes.
there we go.
What?
Exclusive.
Wow.
Exclusive right here.
And I got screwed.
Oh god.
Yes, so I took sides with Australia, and then they got sanctioned by the international committee, and then they told me we cannot support you any longer,
Oh,
and you cannot go to the Oceania Championships. So basically, I came in and broke my ribs, couldn't compete in two very important tournaments that were the ones that were going to give me points after I got scratched up to 0 again. So I lost those points. I'm not going to get points for the Oceania Championships, and I'm not going to get points from the Pan American Championships either. So suddenly I am with no points again, just healed from a very hard injury.
and
In-
when's this? This is
This is
2009.
mid 2019. So I'm
19.
speaking May, June, July, something around those lines.
Wow.
And I'm like, great. You know, Olympics are next year. Everyone is already in, like, because sure, being in the top 30 is an achievement, but the jump from the top 30 to the top 5 is still,
Yeah.
you know. So at this stage, I'm like, you know what? There's no way in hell I'm going to make it to the top 5. But there's different selection criteria. So if I cannot access through the, and I cannot access through the continental quarters through Australia, which were my two main options, I'll have a go and access through Paris. So Paris was the last chance, which was the pre-Olympic championship for the last places in the Olympics. And that happened 2 weeks ago. So I thought to myself, well, if I still make it to the top 100 and I'm the best Mexican athlete, I'll be sent and then I'll compete for Mexico and then I'll try and get a place for the Olympics, you know. So I spent the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020 trying to get into that, and I made it back to the top 100, thankfully. Just scratching in, like. At this stage, I just feel like I'm running against all of these doors that are closing, like in the action movies, and you're just like, I know they're all closing.
Just got through.
Yes. I'm like, okay, good, like good news, we're in. At this stage, the secretary approaches me, the secretary of the Mexican team, and tells me like, hey, we have this dude that is 2 meters 10, and there's no way he can compete in minus 75 kilos, but you can. So why don't you drop a division to leave your place for him? And I told them like, look, we're all old enough here to know and to speak clear. So are you asking me to drop, or are you telling me to drop? And they told me like, no, like it's entirely up to you. But it could definitely help us if you do it. Like, we're not pressuring you to do it, but we all think that is the best course of action, and we could really appreciate it. So yeah,
do us a favor.
Holding a loaded gun at the same time.
Yeah, right.
not pressuring you. But.
Yeah, not pressuring you. Do whatever you want.
After all of this effort, after all of this whole journey, and you just get yourself into that position again where you're half a chance of getting there, you get tapped and asked to step aside in preference for somebody else.
Yes.
Oh, so they weren't asking you to drop weight; they were asking you to drop out.
No, they asked me to drop weight so someone else can get that place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what weight category were you competing at?
So I was competing in minus 84 kilograms, which is semi-heavyweight. Mm-hmm. And the problem with the Olympics, or the issue with the Olympics, is because they don't have enough spots for all of the divisions. We have merged divisions. So they asked me to drop from that merged division, which is semi-heavyweight and heavyweight, into whichever division is under, which in karate is minus 75 kilos. So being 82, I dropped to minus 75.
Wow, that's a big drop.
Yes. Oh, I told them, look, let's play it like this. If the nutritionist says that I'm not going to kill myself doing it and I still have a possibility to compete, let's do it. If not, I won't. And the nutritionist said, yes, you can do it, but it's going to be tough. So I'm like, okay, well, let's have it a go. So yeah, I starved myself for the next months while training 3 times a day. And then COVID hit. Where's the music when we need it?
Started by a guy called John somewhere in Vietnam.
Yeah. So then COVID hit. They told us, don't worry, it's not going to hit in Mexico. It's just a weird thing that is happening in China and Europe, because Europe. Yeah. So don't worry, we'll keep training while all of these Europeans are in lockdown and all of these Chinese. It's just a good news. And as we all know how that story ended, so no good news for anyone. They told me stay in Mexico, because I had my flight back to Australia actually. And they told me no, stay in Mexico, because we'll go straight from here into the Paris Championship, and then you'll have to come back because of the Olympic camp. We'll have it here, and then we'll go straight to Tokyo. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm like, God, at this stage, I'm, like paying rent here, paying rent there. So it's financially stressful, but I'm like, sure, I'll stick around. So I remained in Mexico. Then COVID actually hit Mexico, and we were all sent back home. I told him, hey, tricky question. Borders are closed. You asked me to stay here. How am I meant to go back home? So they told me, like, don't worry. We'll make an exception for you, and we'll keep some venues open so you can train there. That didn't happen either. So thankfully, I made friends with another guy from the national team who had a ranch. And he told me, like, look, one of the coaches and some friends of mine, which are all in the pre-Olympic team, we're all going to the ranch. We would like you to join. If you're interested, we can go train there. My father is paying for the accommodation, and we're all paying for each their food.
Yeah.
And want to swing back?
Well, yeah.
So I ended up stuck in a ranch in Mexico for 3 months, training with them, until that also didn't come to good ends, because at that stage of time, and we can hit the music now.
Here we go.
So the secretary decided to launch a coup against the president.
So this is the Mexican Karate
Cannot
Federation.
Make this shit up.
The Mexican Karate Federation's secretary launches a coup against the president. So you've got your team set, everything's ready to go, you've been training, then the coup happens. Tell us
The coup happens.
tell us how did the coup
the Great Mexican
happen?
Karate Coup.
The karate
of
coup.
2019.
Great Mexican
The
Karate
Great
Coup of
Mexican
2020.
Of 2020.
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah. So basically, the president has blind trust on this woman and her husband. They're both lawyers, the woman and the husband. And every time I know that was his first hint, he didn't see it coming. So he told me, "Oh, whatever you need, deal with them." So basically, he's giving them all of this power. They're basically running the federation already, but they won the title.
Yeah.
They want the power.
Oh yes.
They want the esteem and the honor.
Yeah, they want the honor.
The belt.
Status.
The
Walk around like this all the time.
So then I'm in the middle of the training in the ranch, and at this stage, hopes are very low because COVID is hitting very hard, and many of these athletes are fairly young. And the other one is a friend of mine who is a drunk.
There's an alcoholic.
Oh, she's an alcoholic. I usually have no problem because it's great for the after party, but not great when you are trying to train for the Olympics.
Yeah.
So anyway, at this stage, some days I'm the only one training with a coach. Everyone else is drinking, and the coach is just telling them, you know what? Who knows? Because at this stage, the Olympics has been already pushed back a year. So if you want to drink, drink. And I'm like,
Everyone's given up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
In
I'm
this complete despair.
I'm the only one that I believe I've had lost so much at this stage that I wasn't gonna let.
You're thinking another year's good because it gives you even more chance.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, great, this is probably the breather I need. I'm gonna get back on that horse. So while everyone here is, boo-hoo, let's sit down and drink. I'm like, mate, I had another 5 boo-hoos in the last journey. This is actually a global boo-hoo instead of a Carlos boo-hoo. So, yoo-hoo! Finally leveling up the playfield, people. Yeah.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. This is how it
I
feels.
totally understand that. I massively understand that. Yeah, go on.
So I'm basically training by myself in the ranch. Occasionally I'm able to lobby 1 or 2 of them to come back to train. And then my other friend is loving them to go back to drink. And then one night I come down and the secretary and the husband are drinking with the athletes, and I'm not invited because I've already been told that I'm no fun and I don't drink. I just want to train. And
I've been told
How
that too.
dare you.
I've been told that too.
Yeah. So suddenly I come down like, oh, what's going on? And then they have been drinking very heavily by this stage. Very heavily, like industrially heavily. And the secretary pulls me apart and I'm like, you're not part of the people. You're not part of my people. You have no clue what's happening. I can trust these people or I cannot trust you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, you're drunk. Probably we shouldn't be having this conversation.
And had the coup happened?
No.
At this
But
stage?
this is the
Oh my
first
pre-coup.
clue. This is
Pre-coup.
pre-coup.
The clue.
But this is the clue of the coup.
This is the precursor to
Yeah,
the coup.
it is a very straightforward clue. She told me, I'm going to take over the federation. I'm going to be the first
Well,
Mexican
that wasn't
president.
really a clue,
In a
was it,
drunken
Carlos? That was more like a direct statement.
It was a direct statement.
So in this drunken stupor,
Yeah. So she's drunk and stupid.
She's telling you her plans.
And she's
I'm taking
telling me,
over.
I'm going to take over. I'm going to be the next president, and I'm going to basically like screw the president
And
over.
then you're
and
out.
Screw you over because you're friends with the president, your father is friends with the president. And then this is the funny thing. She really admires my mom because, as I said, she was the
But I
top
like your mum,
woman.
so I'm conflicted.
Yeah. Which makes sense if you think that she's drunk.
Yeah.
So she's like, I hate you and I hate your dad and I hate the president and you're all, like males and you all think you can run the sport. And we're like, what are you going on about? Like this is not about woman empowerment,
Yeah.
This is about the Olympics, mate. So she's like, oh, but I really like your mom. It's a shame you're not more like your mom. I'm like, oh yeah. Like she was doing all of this drunk.
Oh,
and,
my God.
Oh yeah, and then she was like constantly asking me like, you taping this conversation? Are you recording me?
So she's paranoid as well.
Oh yeah. Like this was full on weird shit. Yeah. So long story short, she told me, look, tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna dismiss this camp, and I want you to be the first one gone. Otherwise, we're gonna have a problem. And you're not going to the Olympics. I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty serious. She is pretty drunk, but she is pretty powerful. Wow. So, on this moment, my friend, the one that owns the ranch, and his father are not in the ranch.
Oh.
So they left to do some business. And I'm alone in the ranch with the other athletes. And these guys, the officials, the secretary and the husband. So suddenly I think to myself, well, I have no point actually being here. No one is training. I've just been threatened. Why would I want to stay? And my one friend that was actually, like inviting me is not in the ranch at the moment. So I might as well just back off, go to my parents' students' home because my parents have students there. So I called one of the instructors. He came in and picked me up, took me to his house. Well, things cooled down. So I called the owner of the ranch and I told him, hey man, when are you coming back? What's going on? And he told me what's going on. What? So I'm like, yeah, this woman just came in and dismissed the whole thing, pulled it all apart, said everyone fuck off, basically. And I'm just hanging around in the States, waiting to know if you know anything about it. I could hear him being, oh my fucking Lord. And he's like, give me a second, I'll call you back, Carlos. So then I'm assuming he called her and then he called me back and he told me, look, we have no clue what's happening. We're not able to come back into the ranch at the moment because we're in the middle of business. You're more than welcome to stay in the ranch if you want, but have no clue what's going on with this woman. So yeah, you are more than welcome, but do what you want. I told him, look, I'm out of the ranch at the moment. There's no point going back to the ranch if just you and I, because I'm also running out of money. So I moved to the capital city with my godmother, and I was there for 2 months trying to find a plane back to Australia. And no point going deep into that story. Long story short, I made it back to Australia. She did the coup. And
so she followed through.
She followed through the drunken plan.
The coup was
the interesting thing about this, she has all of the electronic signatures because she's the secretary. So she forged a document faking an election in which she gets elected, which is the most ridiculous, absurd plan I've ever heard.
Wow.
Because sure, you can forge my signature, but the moment I see it, I'm going to be like, I didn't sign that shit, which is what happened. So basically, she did that. Then she went to the World Karate Federation and got legitimized as the president. And then she came back to Mexico. And then shit hit the fan because all of the Mexican...
I think the shit already hit the fan.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. Shit is already flying around the building.
Yes.
So then all of the Mexican presidents of the states and the Mexican Federation are like, what the hell is going on? So they're starting to move, they're starting to make, trying to contact her, asking what the hell is going on with you? Like, this is crazy, what's going on? And then when they realize that this is actually her trying to take over, then they start putting legal suits in place. And then she starts intimidating presidents and faking federations when she cannot intimidate them. So bear in mind, most of the presidents are my age or younger because they just renew. So there's very few old presidents that I can actually stand up to her and be like, mate, you're crazy. I'm not going through with that. So through bribery, intimidation, and fake elections, she started putting different people into different places of power to consolidate her power. So let's say you three are the presidents of 3 different states, and I come and it's like, hey, are you going to support me or are we going to have a problem? You're like, no, I'll support you. I'm like, good. Are you going to support me? No. So Dave doesn't want to support me. Great. I will put Stuart in Dave's place, and I will say Stuart is the actual president of that state. And since I'm the president, everyone will follow through. So then there's a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of confusion in Mexico. Half of the athletes that were in the pre-Olympic team are competing in one federation. Half of the athletes are competing in the other. Wow. They don't even have a clue what's happening. So she did that, and then she didn't have the support of the national body. So the National Mexican Olympic Committee And the national Mexican sporting body said, no, you're crazy. You're not the real president. We're not supporting you, and there's no money for you. But the World Federation, the World Karate Federation, thought she was the president, so they could support her and tell the other guy, like, no, you're not the president. She's the president. She came in with a signed act.
She's a bit of an expert on this.
Oh, she's very clever.
Very smart.
Because even with all of the legal lawsuits, because she's a lawyer, she was able to push them back. So sure, she will still have to face court. But Olympics, the only thing is it's a race against the clock. So she just needed to push it back long enough.
So her ambition in doing this was to install who she wanted in the Olympic team.
She wanted to install her own people in the Olympic team and charge for the tickets. So she charged 90,000 Mexican pesos per person, which roughly comes to $10,000, $9,000.
So if John had 90 grand to stump up, he could buy himself a spot on the Olympic karate team.
Basically. But she could go first to John, and if John doesn't want it, then she picks Paul, and then she could go down by preference and money. And as I said, she's very brilliant and very stupid at the same time, because she sold all of the places to the people she thought that were going to win, and to the people she thought that they were going to give her political gains. None of them won. But she did got some political gains. But then one of my very old competition colleagues, we were actually together in our first national team. So the first time I made it to the national team was his first time we were together. We share a room. And he's the best exponent of his own division in Mexico. So he's the best kata player. They didn't summon him because he didn't pay the fee. But they didn't have anyone else. So they didn't took anyone in that division. They make an official announcement saying they were taking the official team. He was not in that announcement. And then to make it even more bizarre, when they made it to Paris, they enrolled him. Oh yeah, and they called him and they told him, hey, you're competing tomorrow in Paris in case you want to make it. So of course there's no way.
In Mexico.
Yeah. So of course there's no way. And also with the time difference Paris versus Mexico is against. Because if you call me to Australia, I'm ahead. If you call me to Mexico, I'm ahead.
So they just did that to look good in front of the international committee.
Yeah, exactly. So very humiliatingly, Mexican flag comes up with the name of my colleague, and no one shows up. So it's a deserted division. So obviously Mexico loses that place, and it looks like just he didn't care enough to show up. But then the public outrage came out because in Mexico everyone was wondering why they didn't selected him for the official team. And then when they were like, yeah, we did. Here he is, and he didn't show up. They were like, no, you didn't. Here are the screenshots. 2021, mate. yeah. Who do you think you're playing with? Like, you're messing up with us. So then the general public got against her as well. So now she's now she's facing very.
So now the tide's turned on.
Oh
her.
Yeah.
And but
her
still,
singishing,
but still some confusion within the sport as to how to move forward from here.
Yes, because she made all of these fake federations. So a lot of federations are being unconsolidated, like basically divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So everyone is so divided because she created this division. So between the division and the confusion, people are not quite sure who.
But one thing
running.
as a result of all of that was very clear and apparent to you from that drunken discussion was that you weren't going to be a part of the Mexican team for as long as she had any involvement.
So what I was hoping for last time we talked was the courts to come to terms, because if the courts come in and sanction her, then everything comes back to order and the normal president comes back to ruling, and then the original team comes back up. But because she was able to push all of this down, she just remained long enough, and she picked on her own team, and she sent her own team, which, by the way, I kicked all of their asses in the last national championship in Mexico.
Let's just be very, very clear.
Just the males, because I don't fight the females. But yes, all of the males that went to the Olympics, I fought with them in the nationals. And some of them didn't even have a shot. That is what annoys me. Like,
that's really
so
hard.
Mexico.
It's really hard.
I've
had similar people I've competed against who I've just smashed in canoeing, like seconds in front of, who are now competing at the Olympics. That's really hard. And
yes.
And it's more so, that's just,
There's a real injustice around that, isn't there? You know.
You know, I'll be real. Like, I thought my story in canoeing was so screwed up. I don't even share all the details with it because I think it's just so insane.
There's
so
another
corrupt.
episode there, Rory.
Maybe I don't know. I've never felt comfortable. I've never felt comfortable to share all the details of what happened in canoeing, how screwed up and how little like ridiculous things, like the most ridiculous things, like, you know, as you said, like, you know, this woman who comes in and does like gets drunk and wants to take over the organization, stuff very similar to that, like very similar to that. To hear yours is like even more screwed up than my experience, and I actually feel a bit better. Like,
I'm glad.
I don't mean to take from your pain, but I mean, like, you know. It's unbelievable to hear. That is so crazy. And it's like for me, like I was like, I never told any of my friends anything that happened in canoeing because I'm like, this is just it's unbelievable.
It is.
For the normal person, it's like this wouldn't happen if you just go to university and this doesn't happen. People talk about co-worker drama. This doesn't happen like in sport, you know.
It's like Game of Thrones or something.
Yeah, and then I hear this and I'm
Game
like,
of Thrones in it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I haven't watched that, but like when I hear your story, I'm like, I can understand everything and how it would have happened, why it would have happened, like all those crazy people. And it's like, wow, like that's a lot to go through just to try, and all you want to do is be a good athlete. That's all we want to do.
You just want to excel in your sport.
Yeah, we just want to be the best, leave a legacy, and then this is what happens. So.
What's the situation there now?
Well, the situation is I'm writing a book, and I like your title, so
my title.
Game of Thrones.
Sport Thrones or Game of... Yeah. I believe I'm going to write that one instead.
Sport
Karate of Thrones. Oh, no. Thrones of Karate.
I think you're after something good here.
Working through.
And I'm glad you can take up this story because I felt the same than you. I'm still processing a lot of feelings. I just smile because that's the best thing I can do.
Yes,
But
that's what I did too.
Yeah, definitely. Look,
and I drink lots of coffee.
Look, not trying
balance water.
Not trying to compare this to war because obviously war is a whole different ticket. But you know when they told you about PTSD, sorry, PTSD. I have problem translating those from Spanish to English. Definitely, there's something of that in sport.
Yes, absolutely.
I speak with like. And this is not something you can process in a year. You know, this is not something that you go to your summer house and drink some cocoa with a blanket and you feel also suddenly better. Like this takes time and this takes a lot of processing just to be able to share. Particularly because particularly on my side, and I feel you are in a very similar mindset, there's a lot of shame related to that, and you don't want to put your sport to shame. You don't want to admit that all of these great figures that are meant to be role models are actually human and many times even worse humans than the regular John. Because it's only like, for example, for me karate, and let's make a division, not the sport, karate though, it is about teaching people how to better themselves, teaching people how to control themselves and how to be a good community member and how to make your community better, because if you are better you can make the people around you better. That's what it's about. Suddenly coming around all of these people in sport who stand not for this, but for the exact opposite, you know, just personal gain and personal power and stomp on whoever you need to stomp to get wherever you need to be. It's just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking to see how much abuse happens in a sport.
And even more heartbreaking when you come from the perspective of, unlike, say, track and field events and maybe even kayaking, karate's unlikely to come back as an Olympic sport. So there's the chance of being able to compete in the next Olympics is almost non-existent.
Definitely. You know, many people tell you many people tell you like, oh, don't worry, next 4 years, or there will be a next time. And I believe that in some very unconscious level, if you're doing kayaking or, you know, track field or anything that is going to repeat, that sort of soothes your soul because you're like, oh yeah, you know, like, you're right, I may have another go.
Yeah.
But in this case, like, there's nothing they can tell me because when they tell me like, oh, you know, there's always the next time, I'm like, actually, there's not.
No.
They're just blank face. They just look at me like, oh, that really sucks,
there's no
doesn't it?
silver lining.
And that's it. That's it. It's just a sad story. And the thing is, sure, I am the one speaking about it, but I don't doubt for 1 second that many of my friends and colleagues have very similar stories about sacrifices that just didn't meet ends. I was watching the posts after the championships in Paris. So many athletes are retiring. So many of them are in the age of retirement and they were just holding on. But so many are so young and so broken.
Yeah.
Like they are so shattered. And the thing is, sure, not being able to fulfill a dream is shattering, but not being able to fulfill a dream because people are plotting against you for personal gains.
Yeah.
That is just messed up.
Yeah.
And I can understand.
Is at play.
Yeah.
It's all the more difficult to understand.
Yeah, I can understand why all of these 23, 20, 19-year-old athletes are quitting with tears in their eyes, thinking, I will never come back to this shit.
Because when you when you're encouraging young people to get involved in sport, you say you give it your best, and if you work hard, you train hard, you do all the right things, and you've got loads of talent, there's a chance you could be the best. And it seems like from this story and from others that we've heard that you can do all of those things, and you can't really say that to a young child anymore. You've got to have all of that, and then you've got to have the politics on your side, and then you've got to be friends with the right people, and then you've got to have the right type of money and the right sponsor, and that is the thing that kills the Olympic dream. Everybody can handle losing because of their.
Yeah, if you're better than me, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I'd be happy for that. Any day of the week. Anyone who's genuinely better than me can beat me, and I will be happy. And I would have been so happy, and you put it so well there. Like, I left my sport. I left canoeing, and I was really good at it. And I have to remind myself that, because maybe like you, I was made to feel like I was crap. And I was, best in Australia or top 2 or top 3 all the time from from my first smash. Okay, not the very beginning, but like from when I got to that level, that was arm wrestling. But when I got to that level, I was always there. And it's funny reflecting, because I felt like I was shit because of those factors. And what you said is, I've left now. I've left that sport for that reason, and I'm doing boxing, which could potentially even become a bit more, because it is. As you said, it's up to perception. But the thing with boxing is, I feel like I'm starting fresh. I can just be me. Yes. I love the sport. Like, I love it, like it's an art to me. And I feel like even if an outside pressure comes and does exactly what canoeing did to me, at least I've learned how to box, Yeah. And also there's a fighting aspect of it.
Yes.
And I always thought, like, it was 2017 when things were going really bad at the same year. Maybe it was just the year of corruption in sport when things were going bad. And I always thought in my head, when it was really bad, fucked up things were happening, I'm like, I'm going to do boxing. And I actually think part of that was just the feeling of, I want to beat the hell out of these people. They're so crazy. I don't understand. Like, why don't they just want the best for what's in the sport? So you've said it really well there.
Yeah, did you see at the last Olympics there was I think it was an Irish guy, and it was in the boxing, he had a decision go against him where he clearly won the fight, and he did this interview afterwards where he just bagged the judges for like 5 minutes.
Well, they got investigated. Well, the thing is, the International Boxing Association actually went under the corruption things. It was completely remodeled. I think it's based in Kazakhstan, but it was so corrupt that it was actually remodeled a few years ago. So even coming into the sport now, for me, I feel like there's some hope there. But isn't that interesting? They had a complete international board at least investigate, and you don't know how independent those things are, but that's probably definitely what karate would need, and certain federations require. Absolutely. Well, that's the difficulty, like you were saying before, with interpretation. When you can have a boxing match or MMA or karate, I guess if you've got any. When it comes down to a judge's decision and they go, I think that guy, it's like, well, that's where the controversy can happen, because somebody can clearly win. Whereas, as you said, with track and field or, say weightlifting or something where there's a clear finish and this person is obviously the winner and there is no second choice about it. No allegation. And so I would imagine that through all of this trauma, and as you come out the other side of it, and the effects of the PTSD start to wane, what's next for you in the world of karate? Where do you now see yourself, if it's not representing Australia or representing Mexico or going to the Olympics, which has been your dream for the last 5 years? What's next for you
Carlos, in combat sports?
Look, it's funny that you mention it because I have a lot of students that have seen my journey and they want to repeat it. So,
but with a happy ending.
Yeah,
yes,
of course. Everyone wants a happy ending.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, like I want to be a national champion. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to do this. I want to do that. So I believe I fuel the dream. And it breaks me to know that because I know I cannot deliver. So I have these young athletes that want me to help them succeed. But I know the pathway through South Australia is so corrupted. They're going to get worse than if they just don't do it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's come to a point that even my students have been verbally confronted by adults. And I'm speaking a 12-year-old being spoken by an adult that is trying to put him down to get to me or to put me down to get to him in order for, as you said, the club to fail. And you're like, this is not right. This is not what should happen. So what is next? I believe I could step back away from competition for a little bit, and I will focus more on the essence of karate, which is, teaching your students to be better, teaching the people next to you how to be more in peace with themselves, teaching them how to develop themselves. And at the end of the day, the real competition is just you. The real competition is against yourself. And I think that is what has helped me gone through all of these losses and failures, because I put in a chapter of the book. They forced me to choose between my dreams and my morals. My dreams and my principles. And I chose my principles. So sure, the dream is lost, but knowing that you were true to yourself and knowing that you didn't give up into it, it really helps a lot at the end of the day, because you remain true to your essence. And that is probably what you can get out of it, knowing that in the face of adversity, when everything is against you, you still have the wholesomeness of standing up and saying, no, that's wrong. I'm not going to take the corrupted pathway. I'm not going to take the bribe. I'm not going to take what you're offering me, because it goes in detriment of myself and my soul. So yeah, if I could leave the people that are listening us today with something, it would be that, it's always the hard path, or it's usually the right path, which is the harder one. So it's very easy to just turn a blind eye and pretend, it's just for this time. It's just for this person. It's just, but try to, remain true to your principles, whichever these are.
And if anybody's out there is thinking about discovering the world of karate, or maybe has children and heard what you had to say today about becoming your better self and using karate for good and not evil, how is it that they can reach out to you, Carlos, and perhaps learn more about the craft?
I'll definitely give you my details. I'll just make a quick apology for two things. First of all, I apologize for everyone that has tried karate and doesn't like it. I will ask you to give it a second go. And it doesn't go only for karate. It goes for anything you're doing. There's good coaches and good teachers out there, and there's crappy ones as well that are writing the good names of sports. So if your child tries soccer and is hating it, take him to another club before you gave up soccer.
Great point.
Yes, same thing with karate, same thing with rowing. Try through a different venue, and then you'll find out if it's the sport or if it's the context in which it's happening.
Yeah.
The second apology is to the athletes in the Olympics. All of my respect goes to them. They're definitely doing something right. Most of them have sacrificed a lot. Just because the system is corrupted and the process is corrupted, that doesn't mean they are bad athletes.
Yeah.
It just means they're caught in the middle of a bad situation. So kudos on them. Very happy for the ones that are making it. And I wish the best for all of them. We can only have one winner, but I wish for them that they feel realized when they finish the competition and they feel that it was a fair win or a fair lose. However heartbreaking this is. And you can reach out through me through social media, or you can reach out through me through my personal phone. I will always answer messages through there. So I'll first give you my phone. Because
give us your Instagram.
Oh, no, I want my phone.
You don't know our audience.
My Instagram is Carlos, Carlos, then Maya, Maya, Karate, Kiarate. Carlos
we'll
Maya
put all
Karate.
the links in the
Yeah, we'll
description.
link.
We'll get it all up there.
We don't want any corrupt people
that's right.
to
reach out.
Yeah.
Don't put your phone number out there.
Oh, believe me, I know that speaking of this is gonna bring me trouble. Like I'm doing my best to keep real names out of it, because it's not about publicly shaming John. It's just about saying, hey, this is happening. And I don't think, taking the name again, I don't think John is the problem. I think John needs to realize he's been fucking up. And he needs to step up to be a better person and to be a better sports leader.
So culture.
And it's really hard. I think I've been in a similar place where it's like talking about it's really hard for a number of reasons. As you said, like even drawing attention to those people, I feel like they should be held accountable. They should be trying to make better for the sport. But if I speak up about it, there are quite a few reasons for me not to. But one of them is moving forwards in my sports career. It almost could be, they could spread bad words about me pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
The thing, I completely agree with you. And the thing is, I don't fear for myself any longer, because I've come to the realization, to the very peaceful state of mind, which I've done pretty good for the sport. I've outnumbered all of the sporting achievements that I wanted to do. And going back to the family basis, sure, my parents were the best in what they did in the refereeing side, but I've already best them in the sporting side, and my sister. So that was originally my goal. It was just a family thing. I already did well for that. I already set up to most of the goals that I had as an athlete. But I have students that may want to compete. And I don't want to give them any extra hardness, because I've already went through that extra hardness. I've already went to having people that are going to vote against you, regardless of what you do. So you have to do it impeccable. So they have no reason to fundament the corrupted decision. I don't want my athletes to have that extra, struggle in their minds or in their hearts. So yeah, I just think it's something that is happening, and we need to bring light up to it. I don't care about pointing fingers. I just care about it getting better for the kids that are coming into it tomorrow, and for the people that are really interested in, doing it.
So there's completely no other option of getting in for Mexico or for Australia. It's absolutely dead in the water, or there's maybe a glimmer of...
No, it's dead in the water.
Jeez. It's hard to hear that.
What a harrowing tale on a way to end the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again, and thank you, Carlos, for coming along and sharing your story with us. And certainly stay tuned. There'll be a whole lot more of these types of episodes. I think we're up for a corruption in sports episode sometime soon, by the sounds of things, guys.
I need a body protection guard for that one.
We can all be masked.
Head over to dailycombatnews.com.au. If you haven't already done so, you can hit there, you can register your details, make sure that you're getting alerts, all the latest stories from the team here. Also jump onto our YouTube channel. Matt's now in charge of that and making sure all the very best of our content and clips you'll be seeing uploaded there over the coming days and weeks. So we'll look forward to bringing you a whole lot more next time.
Thank you.
Yay.